Thank you so much. Susan, you want to join us? Esteemed Susan Zimet, let me get your actual title here. You're a special assistant. I know what you do. You're in charge of coordinating hunger policy for the state, but your formal title is Special Assistant to Governor Hochul for Food and Anti-Hunger Policy. Is that correct?
Sort of.
Well, what's the actual?
My actual title is the New York State Food and Policy. My actual title is the New York State Food and Anti-Hunger Policy Coordinator.
There you go. And you've been basically tasked by OTDA for being the point person on the restaurant meals program.
Yes, and I have to thank Commissioner Barbara Gwynn for giving me the responsibility and the trust to work on this program and help set it up and implement it.
And how many restaurants are participating now in how many counties?
Well, before you ask me questions,
Yes.
I just have to do one housekeeping thing,
Yes.
which is thank yous, because nobody works alone and everybody works as a team, and there's a lot of people here who are team players who helped to get this program going, starting with Hunger Free America. Joel Berg and his team, very, very, very helpful. The Small Business Services, Rosanna and that team, SBS, unbelievable help. The Mayor's Office of Food Policy Council, they were incredibly helpful. City Harvest, I know there's some people here from City Harvest, very, very helpful. CDE, which is an organization that works with the quick serving restaurants, they've been incredibly helpful. Food Links up in Rochester, where we did our pilot, including New York City. And then, of course, all the state social service agencies were really, really wonderful partners. We could have never done this without them. So.
Excellent. So about how many, all 5 boroughs of New York City are participating?
So what we did was we started as a pilot because, unfortunately, we have so many people on SNAP in New York State. And you heard our commissioner say about 60% were actually the target audience for the restaurant meals program, which is undomiciled, disabled, or over 60 plus, okay? So we couldn't start this program, where we just let every county in the entire state onboard restaurants. We really had to sort of do this in a sort of very thought out process. So what we first did was we did a massive, massive run of all eligible in every single zip code in every single county in New York State. So we looked to see what were the counties that had the highest concentration of eligible participants. And we wanted to sort of start there because we wanted this program to be successful for the restaurants that were working with us on this program to make sure they had enough clients to come and visit their restaurant. So unfortunately, in New York City, as a whole, you have one zip code in Brooklyn that could have 25,000 eligible restaurant meals program people that can go to a restaurant. That's one zip code in Brooklyn, 25,000. The next zip code next to it could be 20,000. The other zip code could be 10,000. You're talking about 40,000 people just in one little area. So we wanted to start there, but we didn't want it to just be New York City, So we started with Rochester, Monroe, and New York City. And so we, after we, first it took us about 1.5 to 2 years to get the FNS to approve the plan.
That's the U.S. State Food Nutrition Service.
Okay, so they have to approve the plan. Once they approve the plan and we were able to start rolling out, we started in Brooklyn and we started in Monroe. Dawn from Zimet Bistro, who's right here, she was the first restaurant in Brooklyn to actually start the restaurant meals program. And it was people like her who were there with us at the very beginning, who helped us look and see where the problems were, where the issues were, how to work them all out. So as we started onboarding more and more restaurants, we knew how to make it so there were no problems for them. So like people like Dawn and this one person up in Rochester, if not for you guys, we couldn't be as successful as we are, but they helped us be the guinea pig to sort of see where the problems were. Once we found the problems, we were able to, as we started onboarding other restaurants, tell them this is what you need to do so you don't have any problems, this is what you have to do. And we've been learning, and we've been changing things here and there because of what we're learning. So the program, because like Joel said, New York City's social service district is one district. That means all 5 counties get dealt with through the social service agency at the same time. So we opened up the program to all of New York City and Monroe, Rochester. So after a year, the program was going so well, we were doing so good, we were getting so many restaurants, and we allowed restaurants from other parts of the state to apply so they can get through the process. So when we started to open it up statewide, we'd have restaurants ready to onboard. And that worked out really, really great. So after a year of the pilot, we literally in January opened it up to the rest of the state. And so we now have 150 restaurants that are actually operational. We have 450 restaurants that are going through the process right now. And every day we get, I mean, I was on the train coming down, and I think I forwarded 4 restaurants to a staff person working on it, and those were the ones that just came directly to me, not directly to her, or through our, or through our RMP website, whatever. So we're getting more and more restaurants every day. So by the end of the week, we have 150 now, 155 now, actually. 150 the other day, 155 now. By the end of the week, we could have 175 restaurants onboarded. It just keeps going and going and going and going.
And I think you or someone told me once that the percentage of the SNAP caseload that are under those 3 categories is roughly 30% of the SNAP caseload. Is that
No,
close?
no, no. You mean how many people are
No,
eligible?
meaning out of the SNAP caseload, how many people are in those 3 categories?
Yeah, okay. Well, we have 935,000 cases eligible.
Okay. So that's more than a third of the caseload.
Yeah, well, Barbara said 60% of people are disabled. What?
60% included the children, though.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's over.
And yeah.
It's over a third. 930. We locked down the numbers. It's 950,000 or something like that cases.
And given New York City is roughly half the
600.
caseload.
No, it's about 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 in New York City,
Okay.
1/3 rest of the state.
Okay, so more than 500, more than 500,000 people in New York City could particularly
Oh,
use their
absolutely.
benefits at
Absolutely.
restaurants.
Well, like I told you, there's 25,000 in one zip code.
My point is, this is a way for restaurants to add to their bottom line while doing good.
So what we found through this program, so let me just explain, if I can, very quickly, the way the program works, just so people understand. It is a 2-part process. You have to come to New York State first. And when you come to us, basically, all you have to do is fill out an application. Everybody has one on their seat. It's a very simple application, and it's really only just asking for contact information for all intents and purposes. And so you fill that out. We send it to our legal department. They do a quick review of the restaurant, make sure that there's no legal challenges to the restaurant or whatever. Once they're okay, we then send it back to the restaurant, and then the restaurant has to fill out this FNS application. You find it online. You fill out this application. It's not the easiest in a sense because it asks for a lot of information. If you do that correctly, if you give them everything they ask for, they can process your application very, very quickly. If you don't have all the information, if they can't read the application, it could take weeks and weeks and weeks of back and forth and back and forth. And if you don't check your spam box, or basically you could miss something from the FNS, and if they don't hear back from you in a couple of weeks, they'll pull your file. So when somebody applies, and after we get approved by the state, and we tell them now it's time to go to FNS, we lay this all out for them, what you need to do, how to do it correctly, make sure you don't have any problems. But the thing I was trying to correct, Joel, is technically it's FNS who really approves you, not the state. We say you're fine to apply to FNS, to the federal government, to be onboarded. And it's FNS that does checks everything, make sure you're okay, make sure that 51% of your sales are in food and not in alcohol or in bagels and buns and that kind of stuff. And it's FNS that approves you, and it's FNS that monitors you and manages you, not the state. We're really just the first step in setting up the plan and the program and allowing people to onboard.
Right.
And just very quickly, there's only 9 states that are doing this program as of yet, but more and more are doing it more and more. Every state can really define how they want to set the program up. So like up in Rhode Island, they only have 8 subways, and that's it. In Illinois, they have a couple of restaurants in Chicago, that's it. They might start expanding. Massachusetts, they're doing a program where it's really only sort of ethnic, independently owned restaurants, and only so many in each area. New York State, and then the only thing that you have to do for this program is you have to provide concessional pricing. You have to give some kind of discount. So some states will do, at the subway, they'll discount the turkey, but they won't discount the roast beef. And then when somebody goes to pay for the roast beef with their RMP card, they're told that's not eligible. And so the person doesn't have food, and the restaurant's stuck with a meal. So we discussed this quite at length to sort of figure out what was the best way to go. We wanted our program to be as simple for the restaurant, as simple for the client, as simple for the social service people, and if there were any problems, we at OTDA would deal with it because we're getting paid to work on this program. So we just decided to do a 10% across the board on any product that you have in your restaurant other than alcohol, which you can't charge. And so that's how we set up our program. We also set up our program where we didn't limit how many restaurants in a region could apply. Anybody wants to be a part of the program, they're welcome. And we also didn't deny quick serving restaurants, the fast foods, for two different reasons, well, a couple of reasons. First, in Monroe, a social service person said to us, there's a lot of areas in Monroe County that are food deserts, and the only restaurants they have are a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Popeyes. So if you don't approve those, we're basically, we're double hurting people in food deserts because they don't have a supermarket and they don't have a restaurant. So A, that was one reason. The second reason is, obviously this program is for homeless people. A lot of people have to leave shelters very early. We wanted to make sure we had restaurants that serve breakfast. So Burger King, McDonald's serve breakfast. Of course, I was thrilled when I got the first IHOP. I was like jumping for joy. Oh my God, I got an IHOP. But we wanted, that ability also. So 10% across the board. Any restaurant, any type of restaurant, we don't distinguish. We don't, whatever you go through the process, you get onboarded, and we're there to help you.
And again, the participants separately have to apply to get SNAP.
No, they don't. Well, yes,
Well,
they apply to get SNAP.
They have to be in the SNAP program, which
Right.
is separately determined by the counties in New York
Right.
City through the states, and they basically they don't get extra money for this.
No.
They get to decide. They get to decide how they use it. If they get $2 a meal and they want to use, $4 for a meal there, it means they just have less for the next
Right, right.
few meals. So it just expands their choices to use their existing benefits.
Right. And also, the thing also is, people on SNAP don't apply to be a part of the Restaurant Meals Program. You don't apply. You're qualified. If you're qualified, your card gets coded. You'll get a notice from either the state or from your county social service saying you are now eligible to use your restaurant meals program at participating restaurants, and then they give you and you'll have the website to go to that will then list all the restaurants that are eligible.
So you hinted at, but a little more specifically, what are the specific requirements for a restaurant to participate?
There's no requirements at all, other than the fact that they have to have no fines against them. They have to be in good standing. It has to be the owner who applies, and they have to have at least 51% of their sales have to be in food. They can't be in alcohol. So if something's like applies and they're a bar and restaurant, first thing we do is write to them and say, before you go any further, do you have over 51% of your sales in food? And they'll write back and say no, and we'll say, okay, you're not going to get it.
But it's got to be hot food, correct? Like
No.
a bodega that happens to have.
The reason why a bodega, we had bodegas in our plan to start. We wanted bodegas desperately, but bodegas apply to FNS as a supermarket, not as a restaurant. You have to be a restaurant to be able to be eligible for the SNAP Restaurant Meals Program. A bodega is a supermarket. So actually, we were talking with one bodega that says, well, I actually have more sales in my hot bar than I do in my staples. Maybe I should pull the supermarket designation and get a restaurant designation. But we talked about that, and it's something we'd love to look at and work on, but the Restaurant Meals Program is a designated segment of the SNAP population. It's not everybody. So everybody on SNAP can go into a bodega and buy whatever they want, except for the hot food. But if a bodega was a restaurant, then all those people who are not restaurant meals eligible couldn't use their SNAP card. So that's something that has to be looked into. But right now, no bodegas, no food trucks.
And right now, unfortunately, you asked, and even the previous USDA said no for home deliveries.
Well, right now, mobile trucks and home deliveries are not allowed. We have in our plan that when they're accepted, because they're testing the mobile market in Massachusetts, and so once the pilot's done, if they decide to add mobile markets, we already have it in our plan that as soon as mobile markets are allowed, we want to allow mobile markets.
And for future advocacy, if you think about it, the reason this program exists for unhoused people, obviously they don't have a place to cook, most of them, but
To cook their food.
to cook their food,
Right.
right? But for people with disabilities and older New Yorkers, the assumption is that the ones who would want to use this program would have less physical ability to go to a supermarket and then bring back the food and prepare it on their own. So then logic would dictate they would most benefit from having home delivery. But I know we have to pick and choose our battles, particularly now.
But there's
with
also a little,
USDA,
there's
but
also
this is
a
something to
little,
look
there's
at.
also a little bit of a quirk with this program, because it's everybody in the family has to be aged, disabled, or undomiciled. So there are states that it's a little bit hard to drill down to the children in a household and all that kind of stuff, but some states pretty much ignore it and don't do it. New York State doesn't. We really look at the household to make sure everybody's disabled, everybody's homeless, everybody is aged, or a spouse. And so you might have a senior who comes in, who's obviously looks like he's eligible. He gets denied. He's probably denied because he might have a 30-year-old at home that's living with him, and they can cook the meal for him, so therefore he's not eligible. So it is a little more intricate, but
And what equipment does a restaurant need to participate?
oh, they need the PS. Okay, yes, thank you. They need the point of sales. This is the only thing that a restaurant needs to do, and it doesn't cost you money to apply. It doesn't cost you money to apply and be a part of this program. You make money by getting more people coming in and being able to use their SNAP card. The only thing that you have to have in place is a point of sale system. So you already have one. Some vendors, like Clover, actually have a button for SNAP. So you just call them, you say, I'm going to be doing the EBT restaurant meals program, and they just push a button and you're okay. Except if they put the number in wrong, which they did with Dawn from Zimet Bistro. For the first couple of weeks, everything kept getting turned down, turned down, turned down, turned down, till finally her vendor, Clover, figured out they put the wrong FNS number in there for it to be operational. As soon as they did that, she had no problems at all. So when we get a call from a restaurant that says we're having problems, the first thing we say is make sure your vendor put in the right FSN number, because we learned it from Dawn. But most companies now, so like Toast, they don't have the ability to have a button, but they will work with you to get an outside vendor like a Square or something else to link with their system. And so there are standalone point of sales that don't cost a lot of money, but what we suggest to every restaurant that we're onboarding, once they got FNS approval, we say call your vendor, see if they can help you, what they think is best for your system, and if you're having problems, call us, and we'll take you for the next step. So really, honestly, it's just the ability to run an EBT card through your point-of-sale system, which doesn't go through your traditional point-of-sale system. That's really all you need.
And once you're in, you're in. Assuming
Once
you don't
you're in, you're
violate
in.
any
Exactly.
program rules, you don't have to reapply.
Once you're in, you're in. You don't have to do anything unless you, of course, yes, you're in violation. The only thing is, and this has already happened, is if you are selling your restaurant, you can't, the RMP does not go with the sale. The new owner has to apply for the restaurant meals program. So Taco Bell, well, not Taco Bell, Taco Bell did apply, and well, no, I'm not going to do Taco Bell. There was McDonald's, I think. They applied, they got approval, whatever, but when they got approval, they wrote me back and said, when I said, okay, this is what you need to do, they said, well, we're about to sell the restaurant, we're about to close on it, can't we give them the restaurant meals program, whatever? And I said, no, that doesn't go along with your sale. You have to tell them they have to reapply.
And the reason that is, just going too deep in the weeds of bureaucracy, is on the rare occasion when there is fraud, and then someone's kicked out of the program by USDA, they might change the name of the place, have the same owner, and just keep doing their, so really tying it to the human being, is a slight fraud reduction thing, as much of a pain as it is. I hate to sound like a former bureaucrat, but I did work for USDA for
Well,
years.
it's also that the owner has to sign the application,
Right.
so it's a new owner.
Right. And that's it. Do you have an estimate of how, your application is like easy peasy. Do you have an estimate of how long it would take to fill out the USDA application?
Well, it doesn't, it takes 2 minutes to fill out the state application. The FNS application is a little bit longer. How long did it take you, Dawn, to fill that application out?
Once you read it and, you know, just to gather all the information that it requires and make sure that you put the right, because I think I misplaced some information.
Right.
And of course, you said, no, Dawn, blah, blah, blah. So it takes me about an hour or so just to gather everything and get the information in.
And can,
I think the process, though, is, and I think it's just because I was new to the program, and the program itself was very new, is that the sequencing of when do you send it to where do you send it. And I have to say, Susan was very helpful. It was as if we knew each other. We were having daily conversation about what the next step is and ensuring that I did it the right way. So the time period for the certification to come back came back within a reasonable time period.
And again, what we found out was there was times when it was taking a long time for something to come back. You know, it was like taking a long time. So one day, a restaurant comes in, I approve the application, send it up to legal. Legal approved the application the same day. They sent their FNS application. They must have had it ready to go. The second they got our application back, because you have to take our application and put it with the FNS application and send it together, okay? Because they want to check the state's okay with you being a part of the program, that we approved you. Once they get it, then it takes time, okay? We get a call from a restaurant 5 days later saying, I got FNS approval. I said to them, that's not possible. You've got to be talking about the state. They said, no, we have FNS approval. I said, can you send me your FNS approval? They did. I called FNS and I said, can you tell me? I never saw this. I've been working on this for months now. This has never happened. They said, Susan, they had everything they needed. We could read it. You know, we could read the application. They had everything we needed. They checked out. Boom, they got it back. Yeah. So it could be within literally, well, it technically we say 3 months, it could happen within a week. And I've seen it happen for a few restaurants. The same thing happened recently again with another restaurant, and we double checked, and sure enough, they had everything right. It all just fell into place. End of story.
It can work very well. Hunger Free America was previously a SNAP retailer for our Community Support Agriculture Project, and USDA approved it very quick. Do you mind me asking you, Don, how's it working for you as a restaurateur?
Well, we get a lot of calls asking about the program. The only problem that I see with it right now is the accessibility of people getting to the food and getting to use their card. So, for example, based on the categories of requirement, 60 or older, disabled, or live in a shelter, those individuals, most of them cannot get to the restaurant. And you need the card to be presented to be able to charge the card. So we can prepare the meal, have the meal ready, but if they can't get to you or you cannot deliver it to them, that becomes an obstacle.
So again, under approval now, this cannot be used for a home delivery app. But there's nothing under current USDA or OTDA rules that would prevent someone from authoring someone else to shop for them and deliver it to them. Are there?
Right, so that's what some people do. So if you have a home health aide, they would come out and bring the card. I would speak to the client. They would come out and bring the card, and we charge the card.
So what I'm thinking off the top of my head, Lindsay, we talk about strategic volunteerism, and could we organize a pilot project with volunteers and maybe AmeriCorps National Service participants? I thought I saw great Kate McKenzie, who heads the Mayor's Office of Food Policy, came in. Maybe she left again. But could Civic Corps members in the City of New York be used? Could we experiment with using civil service people too?
So a couple of things, and also there was somebody during COVID, a young student. He was a Harvard student or whatever. During COVID, he started a program where he would deliver medicine and food to seniors that were locked in and whatever. And he created this, it was called Invisible Hands. And he got written up, it was really incredible, whatever. And 3 years later, he recently got back in touch with me because somebody took over the program and whatever. So there's a program like that we could look into to see how these volunteers could maybe volunteer to do exactly what we're talking about. Simultaneously though, because Dawn had talked to me about delivery, and because we have Grubhub here, Barbara and I, the commissioner and I, were able to talk to Grubhub about how to sort of make this work. Now, it was very interesting because Grubhub, I think it was Grubhub who said, they said that they called FNS to say, could we start doing deliveries? They said, you got to get state approval. I said, well, if they didn't need a state approval, we'll figure out how to get the state approval, but we need Grubhub to make it viable so it's not 30% for the restaurant, then 10% discount, so they're spending 40% to deliver food through restaurant meals program. That's a killer. So Grubhub basically said, look, we could do all sorts of things, we just can't lose money either. So all I can say is I have cards from Grubhub right here, okay? We have intentions of having a conversation. I plan on calling the people or writing to the people at FNS to say, could we, as New York State, set up a separate delivery program, to make this work so we can get home delivery through restaurant meals, and we are going to start working on it.
And of course, we love Grubhub. They're a sponsor of this. They generously donate to us and others. But of course, governmentally, you'd have to make the same offer to.
Oh, sure.
to,
Of course. I mean, we're not just,
any of the-
it just started with, whatever. But of course, any delivery service that wants to participate, if we can get the approval and we can make this affordable for the restaurants, there's no reason for us not to work on it.
Yeah, but and the challenge for volunteer, we would actually especially vet volunteers and national service recipients, because right now you actually have to visit the restaurant with the EBT card.
Yeah, well, actually, yes.
So you need very high vetting of the people for that.
Except, and this is a question, this is something we sort of talked about too, and the commission might be better able to say this is not a good idea or not, I don't know, but I was.
Not to put her on the spot in a public event.
Just put it out there, Susan.
Well, I'm not really, it's nothing that's going to be horrible. So it's just like, in other words, right now, if I call a restaurant and I order, I give them my credit card number, right? Okay? So we had to do a test with a restaurant here in New York City called Justino's Pizza. She was having the same problems Dawn was having with her card not working. People would go in, they would run the card, they'd get declined. It was happening over and over again. Luckily, Dawn was able to work it out with Clover, and they figured out they put in the wrong number. We were having a very, very hard time with Justino's Pizza. So what happened was our agency created an EBT card with a fake number, put $1 on it. We called Justino's Pizza. We gave her the number. She put in 90 cents, and the PIN number. She put in the 90 cents. It worked. And then our technician person was able to say, this is what you have to call your vendor, and this is what you have to ask them to do. And we ended up working it all out. So my only point is, like we give credit cards, would it be okay, Barbara, if a client felt comfortable calling Dawn and saying, here's my number, here's my PIN, now will you deliver the food to me? She knows that they're eligible because she put it in. Even though she doesn't have the card, she was able to punch in the number, punch in the PIN number, have it approved. Then she could make the food and know that she's giving it to somebody to deliver, and she's okay without the card. So is there a comfort level with, we'll have to look into it.
I mean, that's how it works with the online ordering through Amazon or something like that. But you would need a special, I think, authorization from USDA, my guess is.
Right.
And I'm not sure this USDA is going to give broad. One more question, I want to move on to other,
I actually also had a question. I don't know if other folks do too, but when you're done.
Yeah, so my other, if someone who's a current SNAP recipient wanted to, let's say they didn't see the notice they got, which is common, right or wrong, can they call OTDA? Should they call their social service
They
agency?
can just go right on to EBT. They can go right to EBT Edge. That's what they look to see of their balance or whatever. They can go into EBT Edge and they can check that they're eligible.
Okay.
They can also call and if they check and find out they're not eligible, then they can call the social service person and say, can you look at my account and tell me if I was overlooked or why I'm not eligible?
When you say social service in New York City,
Right,
the New York
HRA.
City Human Resource
Yeah,
Administration.
HRA. So in New York City, the client they could check their EBT Edge, see that they're eligible, make sure they have enough money before they spend it. And if they're not eligible, and that's what we tell the restaurants too. We send the restaurants FAQs when they're about to start onboarding, and we'll give them answers to all these questions, like what happens if somebody's card was declined? And we'll say, tell them to check their EBT Edge or call their HRA, type of stuff. What if? And just very, very quickly, something that also would be very interesting to restaurants that nobody would think to ask, but you basically get repaid within 48 hours. So you're not waiting. So, just like I don't know how long it takes for a credit card to hit your balance, your bottom line, but the SNAP reimbursement comes within 24 to 48 hours.
When it comes as a part with Clover, it comes as a part of your batch processing overnight.
So you're not waiting for that money to hit your account.
So before I ask Kim, so for the people that can make it to your restaurant, how has it worked?
Fine. But in the cases where they're not sure if they're eligible or not, to add to what Susan was saying, we run the card before we prepare the meal. And there are times when they are eligible, but they're out of funds. Right? And there are times when they're just not eligible. In front, right by the register, we have a notice that says we do accept EBT. We give them the 3 different categories in which they can be qualified. What we do find sometimes is for the younger people who live in the shelter, they're a little bit embarrassed to say, and they wait until the last minute to tell you, oh, I'm paying with my EBT.
All right.
And at that point, you have to go back, do the 10%, do the removal of the taxes.
And I said one last question. If you also do get cash assistance or TANF, can you use the same card at restaurants to use that?
It will take the money out of that too.
Yeah.
So you're saying, in other words, that if they don't have enough in their SNAP, it'll automatically pull from their TANF?
It has happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Their cash portion.
If you have a cash portion.
Mostly families with children, and again, a lot fewer people receive cash assistance than receive SNAP, but that is more the equivalent of cash. So even if you see at like a laundromat, it says we accept EBT, some people say, wait, that's not food, how can that be? That's for, meaning it's the card, and if you happen to have cash assistance left on the card, you can use it at the laundromat.
And we did do an event over at Zimet Bistro where we sort of did like a little event to sort of introduce the Restaurant Meals Program. We had Senator Prasad there and a whole bunch of people, and we had an incredible, wonderful meal that we paid for because we weren't going to let her give it to us.
I understand.
So Susan, I should
sure.
hello.
Hi, Kim.
As you were talking, I just had a couple of questions, which was the first one was all of these requirements, those are all set at the federal level, correct? So any policy changes about like opening up eligibility, that all has to happen federally?
Everything relative to this program when it comes to process is all FNS. The program itself was set up by the state within the guidelines of how we were allowed to set it up.
USDA Food and Nutrition Service.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I'm just curious in terms of outreach, what OTDA and other agencies, perhaps maybe small business services, do in terms of letting businesses know that this is something that's available to them and that they should look into it to see if they want to do it.
Thanks for asking that. And we just hired somebody starting in January, and she's technically she is the program outreach specialist. But right now, again, we're just getting so many applications all the time. So I've said to her that, at some point what we need to do is sort of say, okay, every Wednesday, we're not going to process applications. We're going to talk about other things we could do for the program. And some of the things we're doing right now is making the website more user-friendly. So, when you go right now, you would go to Brooklyn, and you'd put Brooklyn, and then you'd go down through the whole thing. We want to make it so you look at a map, and you hover over it, and then Brooklyn, everything comes up. What we have done, and why SBS was really incredibly important, the mayor's office was really, really helpful, was when we did the Brooklyn project, SBS sent out a notice in their newsletter telling everybody about the program. And actually, this is really interesting. What happened originally, when we wrote to all these restaurants to to invite them to come to a webinar, nobody was coming. Nobody was coming. I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. I was having a nervous breakdown. I'm not kidding you. Then we sort of realized, I think somebody from City Harvest said to me, Susan, maybe because your email is going to a restaurant from OTDA, it's going into the spam folder, because restaurants, they don't get email from OTDA, kind of stuff. So SBS ended up sending out the invite to the restaurants, and we ended up getting 300 responses, 200 people on the webinar, because SBS did the outreach for us. And close to 200 restaurants applied. I mean, we were so busy just from all these restaurants applying right after that. What SBS is now doing every single month, they're constantly putting something in about this, the Restaurant Meals Program again, an update, because they say every day new restaurants come on, so they want restaurants to know. We knew about today's event. We called SBS. They worked with, with Hunger Free America to basically promote this event, which might be how you found out about it.
I found out from Grubhub.
Okay, so she found out from Grubhub. We recently just did a webinar with with the New York State Restaurant Association, and the New York Restaurant Association said they have some areas where some chapters that are very, very, very strong. So we're going to set up more meetings with them. We're going to start reaching out to Chamber of Commerce's. I know in Nassau County, the social service agency there is actually working to find restaurants to help us. And but we as a state have to still start to do a little bit more outreach in terms of promoting the program. But I also have if the restaurants know the Restaurant Resiliency Program, where the state gave $25 million to the food banks to then give money to restaurants to prepare food during COVID, to get to the seniors, whatever. So we have about 200 restaurants from that program, which we were working with at the very beginning, to invite to participate in Restaurant Meals Program, because they've dealt with government and we wanted restaurants that dealt with whatever. So I have on my table an entire list of all these restaurants that were part of Restaurant Resiliency that are not a part of this program, that we're also going to start reaching out and say, oh, by the way, would you like to be a part of this? So we're trying very, very actively to do as much outreach, work as many partners as possible, and keep going to let restaurants know about it.
Great. I think we have 3 minutes left. I'm intent on keeping this on time. Questions, ma'am?
Thank you so much. Lynette Shellborn Barfield, Director of Strategic Partnerships with Speaker Adrian Adams' office, Council Speaker Adrian Adams' office. I was just listening to a few things that stood out for me, and one in particular, the share in regards to the traveling. I just know vaguely that a lot of our vulnerable population have a traveling system, whether it's through Uber or one of these other taxi car service programs. Is there any possibility of that type of partnership for travel? And then that's just one question. Then the second, very briefly, is regarding the privacy matter with the ID and all. Is there any possibility of connected to the EBT, but maybe a specific ID with the picture or something? Because even with the volunteers and all those other elements you all are bringing in, I'm concerned with the vulnerability of the population. So in terms of identification, someone picking up your food, the travel, all of the above. So any thoughts in that regard? It might be a bit.
I mean, I'll start with the second first, and they're not going to change the EBT card in terms of making a special Restaurant Meals Program card. So that's not going to happen. The most important thing right now is getting chips onto the EBT card so people can't skim and steal and all that. So, okay, so that's not going to happen. In terms of the transportation, I do know that Lyft had done a pilot a while ago, and I remember reaching out to the Department of Health about this pilot because Lyft was doing a thing where they were doing for people in poverty a program where they were picking them up and taking them to supermarkets for free and bringing them back. And I don't remember why I called the Department of Health, but there was something in there that made me call them or whatever, but there could be the possibility of us like talking to an Uber or a Lyft to say, can we work with you to figure out how to create a program, that does this. So, yeah. Well, obviously this whole transportation, I mean, when I talked to Dawn, that was the first thing she sort of said to me was everything's going great, but how do we get to the foods to the people who haven't traveled? So that's the next issue that we can sort of, while we're trying to process all these restaurants, we can also, and I see our congressman just arrived. What I was going to say that we can start working on to see how we can make something like that work. But yes, we want to make this as successful as possible and as easy as possible again for the client and for the restaurant, and then for social services, and then let all the problems be on my back.
And then we also say, we'd love to work with you and
Yeah.
your individual council members on providing technical assistance to restaurants to be able to apply, and B, to work out this issue of delivery. Could we work, as you
Yeah.
know, there are 800 soup kitchens and food pantries in the city, many of whom have volunteers. Could we work with them? Could we work with Meals on Wheels? Could we work with God's Love We Deliver? There's so many great entities here. Could we work again with New York City Civic Corps and other things to figure out a way to at least experiment with using some citizen power, some existing delivery routes to get the food from restaurants to SNAP recipients?
This question right here over there.
Hi, good morning. I want to know The recipients of the program do have a cap and a day to use their, no.
There's no.
Okay,
if-
another
if-
question.
If I am a SNAP restaurant meals program,
Uh-huh.
and I decide to come into your restaurant and spend all of my money on a meal, that's my choice.
Another question, for CBO organizations in different boroughs, say I serve a population, a very high population, homeless people, underserved people, disabled, where I can get a list of the people that they can be nearby and get restaurants. I don't see anybody in my hub. I don't see any sign. I has not seen anything. I need to know where I can get one.
Okay, so let me just see if I understand what you're saying. You have an organization that is located very much in an area
In the
with
Bronx,
eligible.
South Bronx.
With eligible population. In some ways, we started by trying to find restaurants, so I mean, what I would suggest is, there's a sheet that was put on the table, everybody got, and it should have the website, yeah, it should have it does have the, okay, RMP information for restaurant owners. If you go on the website, you can go to the Bronx, click in, and you'll see all the Bronx restaurants that are eligible. And more get added every day, I'm telling you, every day. But what some restaurants do, I know that when we had the event at Zimet Bistro, Dawn and somebody else, Anna from another restaurant, and then a third restaurant that got approved, I put the three of them in touch to sort of say, do self-promotion. The three of you come together and do self-promotion to your audience in your neighborhood so people know this program exists. So,
Thank you.
A, we tried very hard to find the zip codes that had the greatest concentration, which is where we started. And yes, we have to do more promotion working with, the homeless shelters, the disabled shelters and whatever to get more information out about this program.
Great, yes.
Thank you so much.
And one more question, that I see Congressman Nadler's arrived, so we want to get to him.
Hi, Susan. My name is Jessica. I'm from Paris Baguette. We reached
Oh,
out
hi, I forgot.
a
I
year
know
ago.
these. I know.
Yeah.
I know the name. Yes.
And at the time when I was applying, you mentioned that FNS would not approve my application because 50% of my sales come from our baked goods. So is that still the case? Do you see that changing in the foreseeable future?
Unfortunately, I don't see it changing. And the funny thing is, I got your application, and I never threw out your application, even though we haven't been able to go any further. So your application has been in my file forever. I kept seeing it and saying, well, one day we'll see what ends up happening. We actually didn't know at the very beginning that we knew 51% of the sales had to be hot foods and couldn't be alcohol. We didn't know, though, with bakeries, that 51% has to be in prepared foods at a bakery. It can't be bagels, donuts, croissants. Now, some bakeries do have that window where you can get, like, a spinach feta croissant, or you can get, a tabbouleh salad or all that kind of stuff. If 51% of your sales are in meals, not pastry kind of stuff, you would get approved. If 51% of your sales is in that kind of stuff, they're not going to approve you. And I truly don't see them changing the program, because the goal of the program is really hot and prepared meals for people who aren't eligible.
Let
So
me
I
say
still
that.
have your application.
Let me say that could be changed by USDA. I don't know that's going to happen from this USDA in the near future. It could also be changed by Congress. I don't know that the current composition in Congress would be open to that, but let's say hypothetically a different, more open majority takes office, let's say hypothetically in January of
Or
2020.
you can start bringing in more sandwiches.
There you go.
I mean, I don't know what your percentage.
It's
if-
15%.
What?
15%.
What'd you say?
15%.
1.5% is. Oh, that's it.
Okay, well,
You have a long way to go.
Well, thank you so much,
Hey, you're so
Susan. We
welcome.
appreciate it. We'll stay around.
You're
as you-
welcome.